Hey, kia ora whānau. So here we are today, and we're bearing down the barrel of COVID-3. Let me talk about a couple of things. COVID-1 last year, 2020, March, we're asked to stand up a community welfare group called THMO. THMO is the breath of life, not the kiss of death. Those are the words of our leader, Ngāhiwi Tumona. So I'm privileged here to be part of the THMO network. Now, THMO spans from Paritu ki Tūrakirai, which are our most northern and southern boundaries of Ngāti Kahungunu. We have 6 tai whenua: Wairoa, Ahuriri, Here Taunga, Tamatea, Tamaki Nui Arua, and Wairarapa. So what we did is we reached out to our communities and we discussed with them how could we provide for our whānau, how could we lead the way for our community. Now, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had DHB staff, we had primary health, we had some of our health providers in the room, and it was agreed that we would create THMO. THMO would answer the call of our whānau pounamu, our most vulnerable. Now, the kōrero comes from whānau pounamu because of the treasure, the pounamu treasure. We didn't want our whānau to be considered as vulnerable. We actually wanted them to be considered as treasures, things that we must take care of, the same way we would take care of our Heke. So we looked upon our people as whānau pounamu. There was 4 things that we asked them. Who are you? Where are you? How do we get a hold of you? And tell me your situation. He kōrero tō ia whare. In each house there's a different circumstance, there's a different situation. So therefore we needed to understand what our whānau needs. And what we did at THMO is we addressed those immediate needs. Do you need support with finance? Do you need support with mental well-being? Do you need support with kai? Anything like that came about from our whānau, we at THMO, from the northern boundary to the southern boundary, addressed those needs. Now, one of the things that was really important for us in our whare was to ensure that we had the correct reo, or the correct languages. Now, THMO may sound like a kaupapa Māori. It is, but it serves everybody. Mā Māori mō tātou katoa. Similar to our waiata, tūtira mai nā iwi, tātou e. So we called upon our Pacifica relations. Talalei Tofali from the DHB, he was our TMO coordinator for Pacifica. And then later on, we called upon Sukhdeep Singh, who is the president of the Multicultural Association. And we brought all those people into the whare. Everybody in our house was able to converse in their language, in their way, to address the needs of the whānau. So, how does that work? A whānau member would call our 0800 number, and someone would greet them in a universal way, kia ora, because that's the universal way for Aotearoa. Kia ora, how can I help you? What's your situation? Now, the key thing is to be culturally safe or culturally responsive. So therefore, our members of our team were able to address the needs of our whānau, ainga, and all of our relatives from across the seas. Now, there's another group called the whānau tuārangi. Now, the whānau tuārangi, they're our internationals. And here in Hawke's Bay, we have a lot of international RSCs. RSCs didn't quite sound right for us. So the name whānau tuārangi, the families from the horizons. So those internationals were looked upon as well, and we looked after those whānau as well. Because through COVID-1, we didn't know what was ahead of us. We knew what we had behind us under the guiding principles of ko te amorangi ki mua, ko te hāpai o kimuri, te tūturitanga maipono o te Māori mana motuhake. Let God be the spearhead and let his people thrust in behind and allow things to happen. So that was us. We were led by our leaders, we were led by our ariki, we were led by our tupuna, and we were supported by our networks, our community, our whānau. Now, one of the things that we also thought was very important that our whānau had spoken to us about was the fact that we needed to respond and action now. So what we said is that we will be in contact with you within 48 hours. I'm not sure where we got 48 hours from, but we realised that we probably couldn't do it in 12 hours. And 3 days is probably just a little bit too much for our whānau in need. Remember, their situation is important to us. And in every house, there's a different situation. So we would contact them within 48 hours, or if we couldn't respond to them and it needed to be referred to somebody else, some of our networks of networks, our other local or government agencies, or our other health providers or Māori health providers, we would refer that and we would follow up in 48 hours. Now that turned out to be pretty good for us. In fact, we served over 30,000 people. We took in 3,000 phone calls directly into the centre, and I think we did around about 180 tonne worth of firewood. Let's not talk about the pallets of food that was provided from us through Watties and other. But those pallets, 90 pallets of mayonnaise, 90 pallets of pears, we took it all. They were gifted to us, he taonga, and we gifted to our people. But what we did with our pātaka kai, we were able to get apples, thanks to some of our providers, our produce providers here, John Boster, Kevin Bailey, and many others, provided us with vegetables, fresh vegetables, potatoes, pumpkins, apples, and kiwi fruit. 10 tonne a week, thanks to Zespri. And then there was 5 tonne of pork every week. We would distribute those out across our tai whenua structures, our THMO hubs. And through our community champions, there was 120 community champions. Now, I don't know where the idea came from, but it was a mastermind. We needed people to do the mahi on the ground. And instead of us being the centre telling them how it was going to happen, we actually asked them, who do you have in your community that could stand up as a champion? Someone that you trust, someone that you believe, someone that you are going to answer the door when they knock on it. So we had 120 across 6 tai whenua structures, and they were going around the community providing you, the whānau, with kai, with firewood, with information, and with good advice and support, whether it be for our hine ngaro, for your hine ngaro, or your wairua. Karakia was offered as well. Whakawhiti kōrero. Anything that you asked for, we tried. Now, if we couldn't, we asked somebody else. But those champions, 120, they stood up and they answered the call of the communities. So that was COVID-1. COVID-2. Let's go ahead 12 months. Let's consider 2021. There is another outbreak, a community outbreak, and New Zealand goes into lockdown and we're called to action. However, at the end of COVID-1, some of our partners, MSD, Te Puni Kōkiri, they were called upon to support us. And with their support, their financial support, thank you TPK, thank you Te Puni Kōkiri, we were able to complete resurgence plans, or we were able to offer resources for those 6 tai whenua to stand up a resurgence plan. What does that mean? A resurgence plan means that in the unlikely event or likely event that an emergency happens, are you ready to stand up? Because when COVID-1 came about, we weren't ready. However, we were ready in other ways. Our marae are there, our communities are still there, our people are still there, and they've always been ready. They're ready to answer the call. So, through the support from Te Puni Kōkiri, our tai whenua were encouraged to stand up resurgence plans. That means reaching out to some of those support networks, coming up with an emergency plan, identifying personnel that may be used in the event that we go into an emergency, and looking at how your IT support, languages, all those things. So when COVID-2 came around, our phones at the centre didn't really ring. But the phones out in the community and out in our hubs did ring. And so the whānau communicated directly to our hubs. And the resurgence plans stood up and were activated. So there was COVID too. Our phones didn't ring. So we tried to figure out what's going to be our position. Now here, where we are situated in Hastings, one of the largest geographic areas of our rohe with the most amount of our community, we realised that food in schools wasn't being provided. So, with a conversation with a couple of our members, we thought to ourselves, should we have a THMO kitchen? Should we make meals, freeze them down, and make them available for the school children? Because children are used to going to school and receiving lunch. Lunches in schools is a new program. So when we went into lockdown, those things didn't happen. So that was our opportunity. We don't want our community to be a liability. We want to look for those opportunities. So, like us, we looked for the opportunity and we created 3,500 meals over a space of 3 weeks. Now, we only served a small group of communities. That was our Kimberley and Flaxmere communities, but we served 6 primary schools. Now, that's something like 2,000 children. So we weren't serving every child. What we did is that we reached out to the schools, to the principals, and we provided meals to those schools, and those schools knew which whānau would need the support, and they provided that support. Then we got a call from one of our tai whenua, one of our hubs down south, and said, do you have fresh vegetables? Do you have fresh fruit? Because we're struggling to get some. Now this winter, we all know that those vegetables go up in price. So once again, we stood up our THMO logistical hub and we brought in our vegetables and the fruit and we provided that. We thought, gee, we might just keep that going. So Te Hei Mauri Ora has always been here. Te Hei Mauri Ora isn't going anywhere because our people are here, our communities are here, and our whenua is still here. Nā reira, he mi ana ki a koutou, don't forget, get a jab, wear your mask, be kind, and protect you so that you can protect your family and our whakapapa.